Ibadan was a city of stories, some spoken, some whispered. But there was one name that no one spoke after nightfall: Olabisi Memorial Hospital. It stood at the edge of the city, surrounded by thick trees and an eerie silence. During the day, it looked like any other hospital: busy corridors, nurses in white uniforms, and the occasional cry of a newborn. But at night, strange things happened. People who went in for minor treatments never came out. Women who went in to give birth returned with children who were different. But no one questioned too much. The hospital had been there for decades and it was well funded. The doctors were respected and the nurses were dedicated. It was just a hospital, or so they thought. Cynthia had waited for this day for 9 months. She and her husband, David, had prayed for this child. After 2 miscarriages, this baby was their miracle. "Drive carefully, David," she whispered as a sharp pain shot through her belly. David gripped the steering wheel. "We'll be there soon, my love. Just hold on." Olabisi Memorial Hospital was the closest hospital to their home, and at that moment, they weren't thinking about the rumors. All Cynthia wanted was a safe delivery. The moment they arrived, 2 nurses rushed out with a stretcher. One of them, a tall, dark-skinned woman with piercing eyes, smiled at her. "Welcome to Olabisi Memorial," she said in a voice that sent chills down Cynthia's spine. "You are in safe hands." Cynthia barely noticed when David was stopped at the reception. "Husbands are not allowed in the maternity ward," the receptionist said with a forced smile. David frowned. "Why?" "Hospital policy." He hesitated but nodded. "Okay, I'll be right here." Inside, the delivery room was dimly lit. The nurses moved too quietly. There was no sound of other patients, no moaning, no crying babies, only silence. Cynthia shivered. Something felt wrong. Then the pain came in waves, stronger than she had ever imagined. The nurses whispered to each other in a language she didn't understand. One of them touched her forehead and muttered something under her breath. The last thing Cynthia saw before darkness took her was the head nurse's eerie smile. Regina arrived at Olabisi Memorial 2 weeks later, also in labor. Unlike Cynthia, she had no husband to hold her hand. Her boyfriend, Tunde, had abandoned her the moment she told him she was pregnant. But Regina wasn't afraid. She was a fighter. As she lay in the delivery room, sweating and pushing, she noticed something strange. The nurses kept glancing at a small wooden box in the corner. Every time she screamed, they whispered to it. And then came the moment of birth. Regina pushed, and the room went dark. The lights flickered back on, and a sharp cry filled the air. But the baby's cry was different. Hollow. One of the nurses quickly wrapped the baby in a cloth and turned away. Regina, exhausted, stretched her hand. "Let me see my child." The nurse hesitated. "Just rest for now." "No! Give me my baby." The nurse turned, and for a brief second, Regina saw something. Her baby's eyes were black. Completely black. Then everything went dark again. When Cynthia and Regina finally woke up the next day, they were back in separate hospital rooms. The nurses smiled as they handed them their newborns. "Congratulations," they said. "You have beautiful babies." But something was wrong. Cynthia's baby wouldn't stop staring at her with cold, knowing eyes. Regina's baby didn't cry, just watched her, unblinking. And somewhere deep within Olabisi Memorial Hospital, behind a locked door, 2 nurses stood in front of a mirror. The reflection did not show their human faces. It showed something else, something ancient. And it whispered, "It is done." Cynthia held her baby close, but something about him felt off. David was overjoyed. "Our son, our miracle," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "What should we name him?" Cynthia hesitated. The baby's eyes were still locked onto hers, too focused for a newborn. "Ayo," she finally said. "He will bring us joy." But deep inside, she felt an uneasiness she couldn't explain. Meanwhile, across the city, Regina sat alone in her small apartment, staring at her baby. He never cried, never made a sound, just watched her, like he knew things no child should. She shivered. "This isn't normal," she whispered, but who could she tell? It didn't take long before strange things started happening. By the time Aya was 6 months old, Cynthia began noticing things. One night, she woke up to find him standing in his crib, Not crawling, standing. His dark eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. David was fast asleep beside her. She shook him. David, wake up! He groaned. What is it? She pointed. Look. David rubbed his eyes and sat up. Cynthia, he's sleeping. She turned back. Io was lying down, breathing softly. Had she imagined it? No. She knew what she saw. Regina, too, was beginning to lose sleep. Her son, Daniel, was unnatural. At 10 months, he could speak, full sentences, with no baby babbling. One night, she sat at the table eating, and he simply said, You should stop eating so much rice, Mama. It's bad for your heart. Regina froze, the spoon halfway to her mouth. Who told you that? Daniel only smiled. You'll see. Her heart pounded. And 2 weeks later, she was rushed to the hospital with severe chest pains. The doctors called it stress. Regina called it something else. She was raising something that wasn't human. Cynthia and Regina were strangers, but fate had a way of pulling victims together. One evening, Cynthia took Io to the market. She needed fresh vegetables, hoping to cook something to calm her nerves. That was when it happened. Io saw Regina and her son, Daniel. The moment their eyes met, both children froze. The air turned cold. Then, at the same time, they spoke. It's you. Regina gasped. What did you just say? Cynthia looked at her son in horror. Io, what's going on? Daniel smirked. She doesn't know, Mama. Regina grabbed Cynthia's arm. We need to talk. And just like that, their destinies became tangled. Regina and Cynthia sat in Cynthia's living room that night, their children playing quietly on the floor. Regina took a deep breath. Something is wrong with them. Cynthia nodded, her hands shaking. Io, he's not normal. He does things babies shouldn't do. Regina shuddered. My son speaks like an adult, and last week I saw him whispering to the mirror. The mirror, Cynthia. The two women fell into silence. Then Cynthia whispered, What if they weren't supposed to be ours? Regina looked up sharply. What do you mean? Cynthia swallowed hard. What if something happened at the hospital? What if our babies were swapped? Regina scoffed. That's impossible. But deep down, she wasn't so sure. The hospital had always been strange, and the nurses weren't normal. A chilling wind blew through the house. On the floor, the two children looked at each other and smiled. Regina and Cynthia sat in tense silence, staring at their children. Io and Daniel were no longer playing. They were just watching. Two toddlers, barely a year old, sitting side by side, their gazes locked onto their mothers. Then Daniel spoke. You shouldn't have met. Cynthia's stomach turned. What did you say? Io chuckled. It's too late now. Regina jumped to her feet. Cynthia, we need to leave. Now! Cynthia scooped Io into her arms and ran, her heart pounding. Regina grabbed Daniel and followed. As they rushed outside, the air felt heavy, like something unseen was pressing against their chests. A deep whisper echoed in the night. You should not have questioned it. The streetlights flickered. Then the power went out. Regina screamed. The next morning, Cynthia and Regina knew they had to go back to the hospital. Something had happened the night their children were born. They needed answers. Olabisi Memorial Hospital looked normal under the bright sun. Nurses moved about, patients walked in and out, and the scent of antiseptic filled the air. But Cynthia's skin crawled. The place felt wrong. At the reception, Regina forced a smile. Good afternoon. We had our babies here last year and would like to check our birth records. The receptionist's smile didn't reach her eyes. I'm sorry. We don't release birth records to the public. Cynthia clenched her fists. We are the mothers. We have a right to see them. The receptionist's expression didn't change. Come back tomorrow. A cold wave passed over them. Regina grabbed Cynthia's hand. Let's go. As they turned to leave, Cynthia glanced at the wall behind the receptionist. It was covered in framed photographs of hospital staff. One photo caught her eye. A group of nurses stood together, smiling. The year written on the plaque was 1978. Her blood turned to ice. The head nurse in the picture was the same nurse who had helped deliver Io, the same woman, the same face, but it had been over 20 years ago. Cynthia's breath hitched. Regina, look. Regina followed her gaze. Her hands turned cold. It was impossible. The nurses had never aged. That night, Cynthia and Regina locked their doors and held their children close. Cynthia sat awake, watching Io sleep. She felt a deep fear in her heart. Was this really her child? Io shifted, and without opening his eyes, he whispered, You shouldn't have gone back. Cynthia's blood ran cold. Meanwhile, in Regina's apartment, Daniel was sitting up in his crib, whispering. But he wasn't talking to himself. He was talking to something in the shadows. That same night, Cynthia had a dream. She was back at Olabisi Memorial, lying on the hospital bed, the pain of labor gripping her body. But this time, she saw what happened. The nurses weren't human. Their eyes glowed red, their fingers long and clawed. As she screamed in pain, they chanted in a strange language, circling a wooden box in the corner of the room. The moment her baby was born, one of the nurses lifted him up, and something dark entered his body. Cynthia gasped, trying to scream. A shadow loomed over her. The head nurse leaned down, her breath cold against Cynthia's ear. Your son was never yours. Cynthia woke up, screaming. The truth must be found. Regina ran into Cynthia's room. What happened? Cynthia was shaking, drenched in sweat. I saw it. I saw what they did to our babies. Regina's face paled. Tell me everything. Cynthia took a deep breath. We need to find out who runs Olabisi Memorial. And we need to do it fast. Regina nodded. Because I don't think we have much time left. Somewhere in the darkness, unseen eyes were watching, and they were not pleased. Cynthia and Regina sat in Cynthia's living room, their children asleep in the next room. The dim light cast shadows on the walls, but something about them felt unnatural. Regina rubbed her arms. Cynthia, ever since we left the hospital today, I feel like something is watching me. Cynthia nodded. Me too. And it's getting worse. Regina's phone vibrated on the table. She picked it up. Unknown number. Her hands trembled. She answered. Hello? A voice whispered. You should have stayed away. Then the line went dead. Regina dropped the phone. Cynthia, they know. A faint giggle echoed from the children's room. They both froze. It wasn't a normal child's laugh. It was deep, distorted. Cynthia grabbed Regina's hand. We need help. Now. The next morning, they drove to an old part of Ibadan, seeking out the only person Cynthia could think of. Mama Fedeke, an elderly woman known for her knowledge of strange things. Her house was small, hidden behind thick banana trees. Cynthia knocked. The door creaked open. An old woman peered out, her eyes sharp. I was expecting you. Regina's heart pounded. How? Mama Fedeke stepped aside. Come inside. We have little time. They entered the dimly lit room, the scent of burning herbs thick in the air. Tell me, Mama Fedeke said, settling into a wooden chair. Why do you seek the truth about Olabisi Memorial? Cynthia and Regina explained everything. The strange births, the unnatural behavior of their children, the nurses who never aged. The old woman listened, her face grim. When they finished, she took a deep breath. Olabisi Memorial is cursed, Regina shivered. Cursed? How? Mama Fadeke leaned forward. 40 years ago, that hospital was a sacred ground. It was built on the burial site of a powerful priest. When they constructed the hospital, they angered the spirits. Cynthia gasped. The spirits did not want the hospital there, Mama Fadiki continued. So they demanded an exchange. The nurses, sprit to keep the hospital running, made a pact with the dark world. Regina's voice shook. What kind of pact? Mama Fadiki's voice was barely a whisper. They take the destinies of newborns and replace them with darkness. Cynthia's breath caught in her throat. So Io and Daniel? The old woman nodded. Your children were never meant to be yours. Their real destinies were stolen. They now carry the souls of the cursed. Regina covered her mouth. My God. Cynthia clenched her fists. How do we stop it? Mama Fadke's eyes darkened. Stopping it means challenging the spirits. It means returning to where it all began. But be warned. Olabisi Memorial does not let its secrets go easily. That night, against all reason, Cynthia and Regina found themselves standing outside Olabisi Memorial Hospital. The building loomed before them, silent and dark. Cynthia swallowed hard. Are we really doing this? Regina took a deep breath. We need to know the truth. They pushed open the glass doors. The reception was empty. No nurses. No patients. Just eerie silence. A flickering light led them down a long corridor. Then they heard it. A baby crying. The sound echoed through the halls, sending chills down their spines. Regina grabbed Cynthia's arm. That sounds like... Ayo, Cynthia whispered. They ran. The crying grew louder, leading them to a heavy iron door. Regina reached for the handle. The moment she touched it, a deep voice whispered, You should not have come back. The door slammed open, and what they saw inside would haunt them forever. The iron door swung open with a loud creak, revealing a cold-lit room. unfeelingly lit room. Thin Regina stepped inside cautiously. Rows of cribs lined the walls, each covered with a thin white sheet. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of antiseptic and something else. Something rotten. Then they heard it. A faint whispering. It wasn't coming from a person. It was coming from the cribs. Regina swallowed hard. Cynthia, something is very wrong. Cynthia took a shaky step forward and lifted the sheet off the nearest crib. She screamed. The crib was empty, except for a single, shriveled umbilical cord, blackened with age. Regina backed away, clutching her chest. What is this place? Then they heard the cry again, a baby's wail, echoing from the back of the room. Cynthia turned sharply. Io? Regina's breath hitched. Daniel! They ran towards the sound. At the far end of the room was a large glass incubator. Inside, something moved. Cynthia pressed her hands against the glass, her breath fogging it up. Oh my God! Inside the incubator, dozens of tiny lights floated around, trapped, swirling in a slow, sorrowful dance. Regina stared in horror. What? What are those? A voice behind them answered. They're stolen destinies. Cynthia and Regina spun around. Standing in the doorway was the head nurse, the same woman from the old hospital photograph. Unchanged, unaged, unnatural. Her eyes glowed dimly, her lips curling into a smile. You shouldn't have come back, she said. Regina stepped forward, shaking. What have you done to our children? The nurse's smile widened. We didn't take them. We only exchanged them. Cynthia's voice trembled with rage. You stole their futures. The nurse tilted her head. They were never meant to be yours. She walked slowly towards the incubator and placed her palm on the glass. The tiny lights flickered violently, as if trying to escape. Regina's eyes filled with tears. Give them back! The nurse sighed. Oh, my dear, it doesn't work that way. Once a destiny is removed, another must take its place. Cynthia gritted her teeth. Then take back whatever darkness you put in our children and return what is rightfully theirs. The nurse's expression darkened. You don't understand. Your children are not children anymore. A cold wind rushed through the room. The lights in the incubator dimmed. A deep, guttural growl filled the air. Regina and Cynthia turned, and their children stood behind them. The children are not themselves. Io and Daniel were standing in the doorway, their small bodies unnaturally still. Their eyes, once bright and innocent, were now black voids. Regina gasped. Daniel? He didn't answer. Io took a slow step forward. Go home, Mama, he whispered, before it's too late. Cynthia's heart pounded. Io, baby, come to me. Io smiled. But it wasn't a child's smile. It was something ancient. Then, at the same time, both boys tilted their heads in unison and spoke in a voice that was not theirs. Leave, or stay and suffer. Regina's breath came in short gasps. Cynthia, we need to go. Now. The head nurse chuckled. Smart choice. Cynthia hesitated, staring at her son. I can't just leave them. But then Daniel took another step forward, and his fingernails grew longer, sharper. Regina grabbed Cynthia's arm and yanked her towards the door. Run! They sprinted through the halls, their feet slamming against the cold tiles. Behind them, they could hear the pattering of small footsteps chasing them. But they didn't look back. Not until they burst out of the hospital into the dark, humid night. They collapsed on the ground outside, gasping for breath. And when they dared to glance back, Olabisi Memorial was completely dark, as if it had never been open. Regina and Cynthia drove back home in silence. The reality was sinking in. Their children were no longer their children. The hospital had won. Regina gripped the steering wheel tightly. What do we do now? Cynthia wiped away a tear. We fight. Regina turned to her. How? We saw what they are now. They aren't human anymore. Cynthia's jaw tightened. Then we find a way to make them human again. Regina shook her head. You heard the nurse. Once a destiny is taken, another must take its place. There's no way to fix this. Cynthia's eyes darkened. Then we'll have to steal their destinies back, by any means necessary. Somewhere in the distance, a child's laugh echoed through the night. But it wasn't Io's, and it wasn't Daniel's. Something else was listening. Something else was waiting. Cynthia and Regina sat in Regina's living room, their hands trembling as they recounted everything that had happened. The night had been long, filled with unnatural shadows and haunting whispers. Their children, no, the things pretending to be their children, had stared at them with cold, empty eyes before disappearing into the darkness. They knew they couldn't fight this alone. Regina grabbed her phone with shaky fingers. There's a pastor. Pastor Olumide. My sister said he once helped a woman whose child was possessed. Maybe he can help us. Cynthia looked doubtful but desperate. Call him. Regina dialed the number. After 3 rings, a deep, calm voice answered. This is Pastor Olumide. Regina swallowed. Pastor, please, we need help. It's about our children. The line was silent for a moment. Then, the pastor sighed. Come to the church. Immediately. The Church of Lighthouse Ministries. The women arrived at Lighthouse Ministries, a small church located at the outskirts of Ibadan. The building was simple but felt peaceful. They were greeted by a tall, middle-aged man with piercing eyes. Pastor Olumide. He studied them carefully before leading them into his office. Tell me everything, he said, his voice steady. Regina and Cynthia poured out their story, the pregnancies, the strange nurses, the unnatural behavior of their children, and what they had seen at Olabisi Memorial Hospital. When they finished, Pastor Olumide exhaled deeply. Olabisi Memorial is no ordinary hospital, he said. It is a gateway. Cynthia's body tensed. A gateway to what? The pastor's expression darkened. To the kingdom of the lost. Pastor Olumide leaned forward, his fingers interlocked. Years ago, before that hospital was built, the land belonged to a powerful priest, a man of light. He used that place to help barren women conceive and restore lost destinies. Regina frowned. Then why is it evil now? The pastor sighed. Because after he died, a group of women, witches, disguised as nurses, took over the land. They turned it into a place of corruption, where newborns' destinies could be harvested and sold to dark forces. Cynthia gasped. Sold? Pastor Olumide nodded grimly. Every child born in that hospital has been tampered with. Some have their destinies exchanged. Others become vessels for spirits. Regina shook her head violently. No, that's not possible. But deep down, she knew it was true. Cynthia clutched her hands together. Pastor, please, is there a way to get our real children back? Pastor Olumide closed his eyes for a moment, then spoke. There is, but it will not be easy. Regina and Cynthia leaned in. You must go back to Olabisi Memorial. Cynthia's stomach twisted. Again? Pastor Olumide nodded. But this time, you will not go alone. We will fight with the power of God. The pastor led them to the altar, where he gathered 3 other prayer warriors, men and women known for their spiritual strength. He placed a Bible in front of them. We will fast and pray tonight, he said. At midnight, we go. Cynthia's voice shook. And if the hospital fights back? The pastor's eyes burned with determination. Then we fight harder. Regina exhaled sharply. We just want our children back. Pastor Olumide placed a firm hand on her shoulder, and we will get them. But be warned, once we start this battle, we cannot turn back. The women exchanged a look. Then they both nodded. They would fight for their children, no matter what it took. The church bus arrived at Olabisi Memorial just as the clock struck midnight. The hospital stood in eerie silence, its glass doors reflecting the pale moonlight. The prayer warriors stepped out of the bus, singing hymns softly. Pastor Olumide raised his Bible. No matter what happens, do not stop praying. Cynthia and Regina held hands as they followed him inside. The moment they stepped into the hospital, the air changed. The lights flickered. A deep, guttural growl rumbled through the walls. Regina whispered, They know we're here. Pastor Olumide's voice rang out. In the name of Jesus, we take back what was stolen. The ground trembled. A cold wind rushed through the hallways. Then from the shadows they emerged. The nurses. But now their faces were twisted, grotesque, inhuman. Their eyes glowed red, their hands stretched into long, clawed fingers. The head nurse stepped forward. Her voice was a chilling echo. You should not have returned. Pastor Olumide lifted his Bible. We come in the power of God. Release the children you have stolen. The head nurse's lips curled into a smile. You want them? Then take them. She snapped her fingers, and suddenly the walls of the hospital melted away, revealing a dark, endless void. And in the center of that void, floating in a circle of fire, were dozens of tiny lights, the lost destinies of the children. Regina gasped. That's them! Cynthia took a step forward. Ayo, Daniel! But before they could move, the nurses attacked. Their voices turned into high-pitched screeches as they rushed forward, their claws reaching out. Pastor Olumide threw holy water at them. The Lord rebuke you, he shouted. The water sizzled as it touched their skin, making them shriek in pain. Regina and Cynthia dropped to their knees, praying loudly. The hospital shook violently. The fire around the floating destinies dimmed. The battle had begun. The hospital shook violently as Pastor Olumide and his prayer warriors prayed louder. The evil nurses screamed, their bodies twisting as if something was burning them. The air became thick and heavy. Cynthia and Regina held hands tightly, their hearts pounding. The floating lights, the stolen destinies, flickered weakly, as if waiting to be freed. Pastor Olumide raised his Bible higher. In the name of Jesus, let the captives be set free. The walls of the hospital cracked, revealing dark shadows crawling underneath. The head nurse let out a deep growl, her red eyes glowing. "You cannot take what belongs to us," she hissed. She stretched her long fingers, and from the shadows, dark figures with hollow faces appeared. Regina gasped. "What are those?" Pastor Olumide's voice remained strong. "Spirits of stolen destinies. They are trapped souls." Cynthia's eyes filled with tears. "That means our real children, they are in danger." These spirits started moving towards them, whispering in strange voices. Regina felt her body grow weak, as if something was pulling her soul away. Cynthia held her tighter. "Pastor, what do we do?" Pastor Olumide poured more holy water on the ground. "The power of darkness cannot stand against the light," he declared. Suddenly, a bright light filled the room. The spirits screamed and backed away. The floating destinies began to glow brighter. The battle was shifting. But then, the head nurse laughed. "You think you can win?" The head nurse sneered. She stretched her hands and two figures appeared from the shadows. Cynthia and Regina froze. Io and Daniel stood before them. Their eyes were still black and empty, their faces emotionless. Regina's voice shook. "Daniel, my son." Io tilted his head. "Go home, Mama." Daniel took a step forward. "We are not yours anymore." Cynthia's knees weakened. "No, no, you are our children." The head nurse smirked. "If you want them, take them back by force." Regina looked at Pastor Olumide. "What do we do?" The pastor's voice was firm. "Hold them. Call their real names with authority." Regina and Cynthia rushed to their children and grabbed them. The boys struggled, trying to break free, but their mothers held on tightly. "Io, it's me, your mother," Cynthia cried, shaking him. "Daniel, come back to me." Regina sobbed. The boys let out an inhuman scream. Their bodies started trembling violently. The head nurse stretched her hand, trying to take them back. Pastor Olumide threw more holy water. "In the name of Jesus, their destinies are restored," he shouted. The floating lights shot forward, entering Io and Daniel's bodies. The boys collapsed on the ground. The hospital shook violently again. The nurses screamed, their bodies bursting into flames one by one. The head nurse let out a loud, piercing shriek. She burst into black smoke and disappeared. Regina and Cynthia knelt beside their sons. "Io?" Cynthia shook him gently. "Io, can you hear me?" Io slowly opened his eyes. His pupils were no longer black. "Mama," he whispered weakly. Tears rolled down Cynthia's cheeks. "Yes, baby, it's me." Regina shook Daniel softly. "Daniel?" Daniel blinked and looked around, confused. "Mummy? Where are we?" Regina let out a loud cry and hugged him tightly. Pastor Olumide exhaled in relief. "It is done." The hospital let out one final loud crack. Then everything went silent. The battle was over. The next morning, Cynthia and Regina sat in Pastor Olumide's church, watching their sons sleep peacefully. The boys had no memory of what had happened. Pastor Olumide smiled. "Their destinies are restored. They will live normal lives now." Regina wiped her eyes. "Thank you, Pastor. We would have lost them forever." Cynthia nodded. "God used you to save them." Pastor Olumide sighed. "It was God's battle, not mine. But you must be careful. Not evil like that does not die easily." Regina frowned. "You mean the hospital?" Pastor Olumide's eyes darkened. "Evil always finds another way." Cynthia's heart skipped a beat. She thought about the other children, the other destinies that had been stolen. Had they truly saved them all? Or was something still lurking in the shadows, waiting, watching, ready to start again? By the time Cynthia and Regina finished telling their story, the entire church was silent. Some people had their hands over their mouths, others were whispering in fear. The pastor stood at the altar, looking deep in thought. Pastor Olumide finally spoke. "Evil exists, but so does the power of God, and today, victory was won." The congregation erupted in shouts of praise and thanksgiving. Women wept, men lifted their hands, and children clung to their mothers in awe. Word spread fast. Olabisi Memorial Hospital was deserted. No one went near it again. People whispered stories of screams heard in the night and shadows moving through the broken windows. Some said the spirits of the nurses still wandered the halls, searching for more souls to trap. Out of fear, the local government placed a warning, a large sign in front of the abandoned land. Do not enter. Evil lives here. As for Cynthia and Regina, they returned home with their sons, their hearts finally at peace. They had suffered, but in the end, they won. God had won. And Olabisi Memorial Hospital? It became nothing more than a ghost story, a place people feared, a name they refused to speak. But some say, on certain nights, if you stand too close to where the hospital once stood, you can still hear the whispers. What do you think? This is the end of this story, but now we ask you, do you believe things like this still exist today? Have you heard of similar stories? Or do you think it's all just a myth? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this story, hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this video with your friends. There are more thrilling and mysterious stories coming your way. Stay tuned.